There are moments in life when silence becomes your greatest weapon. And I learned this at 63, standing in a funeral parlor, wearing my best black dress, while my son and his wife whispered about my future as if I were already dead. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Trust me, you're going to want to follow this story to its end. My name is Corinne Thornfield, and I've been a widow for exactly 14 days. 14 days since Rodney drew his last labored breath in that sterile hospital room. 14 days since I held his cold hand and promised him I'd be strong. What I didn't promise, what I couldn't have imagined I'd need to promise, was that I'd protect myself from our own son. The morning of Rodney's funeral, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, fastening the pearl necklace he'd given me for our 20th anniversary. My reflection showed a woman who'd weathered 6 decades with dignity intact, silver hair pulled back in a neat chignon, brown eyes that still held fire despite the recent tears. I'd lost weight during Rodney's illness, but I carried myself straight, shoulders back, a habit from my teaching days when commanding respect meant everything. The house felt different without Rodney's presence. 40 years we'd lived here in Cedar Falls, Iowa, watching the neighborhood change, the young families move in where elderly couples used to wave from their porches. Our colonial-style home with its blue shutters and wraparound porch had been Rodney's pride. He'd spent every weekend for 20 years perfecting the garden, building the deck, refinishing the hardwood floors we'd walked across for decades of marriage. I made coffee in Rodney's favorite mug out of habit, then poured it out when I realized what I'd done. The silence pressed against me like a physical weight. We'd had our routines, Rodney and I. Morning coffee, evening news, weekend drives to visit his sister in Des Moines. Simple pleasures that make up a life well lived. The doorbell rang at 9:30 sharp. I knew it would be Gregory, my 41-year-old son, and his wife Roxanne. They'd been attentive during Rodney's final weeks, visiting the hospital, helping with arrangements. I'd been grateful then, mistaking their efficiency for compassion. Gregory stood on my doorstep in his charcoal suit, looking every inch the successful insurance adjuster he'd become. He had Rodney's strong jaw, but my brown eyes, though his held none of the warmth I remembered from his childhood. Roxanne stood beside him in a black dress that probably cost more than I used to spend on groceries in a month. She was pretty in that polished way some women achieve in their 30s. Blonde highlights, perfect makeup, manicured nails that never saw real work. "Mom," Gregory said, stepping forward to embrace me. "How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," I replied, breathing in his cologne. When had my little boy started wearing cologne that cost more than Rodney's aftershave? Roxanne kissed my cheek, leaving a faint trace of lipstick. "Corinne, you look tired. Are you sleeping?" "As well as can be expected." We drove to the funeral home in Gregory's BMW, me in the back seat like a passenger in my own life. I watched the familiar streets of Cedar Falls pass by. The diner where Rodney and I had our first date. The park where Gregory learned to ride his bicycle. The library where I'd worked for 15 years before Rodney's business took off. The service was small but dignified. Rodney had outlived most of his contemporaries, and Gregory had limited the arrangements to immediate family and a few neighbors. Reverend Collins spoke beautifully about Rodney's dedication to his family and community, about the small construction company he'd built from nothing into something that supported us comfortably for 30 years. What Reverend Collins didn't know, what Gregory and Roxanne didn't know, was that Rodney had been far more successful than any of us had realized. I'd discovered this 3 days after the funeral, when Rodney's lawyer, David Morrison, called to schedule a meeting. David had handled Rodney's business affairs for 20 years, but Rodney had always managed our personal finances himself. "Private meeting," David had specified on the phone. "Just you, Corinne." Rodney's instructions were very clear about that. The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday, but Rodney's secrets were already burning in my chest like swallowed fire. The evening after the funeral, Gregory and Roxanne stayed for dinner. I'd made Rodney's favorite pot roast, needing the familiar motions of cooking to keep my hands busy and my mind occupied. We sat at the dining room table where Gregory had done his homework as a boy, where Rodney and I had shared thousands of meals, where I'd served Christmas dinner to our small family every year since Gregory was born. "Mom," Gregory began, cutting his meat with precise movements. Roxanne and I have been talking. I set down my fork. Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. We're worried about you, Roxanne added, her voice carrying that particular brand of concern that sounds rehearsed. Living alone in this big house, managing everything by yourself. I've been managing just fine for 63 years, I said evenly. Gregory exchanged a look with his wife. Dad handled all the finances, all the paperwork. The house, the utilities, the insurance. It's a lot for anyone to manage alone. Your father taught me well. But you don't need to struggle through it alone, Roxanne continued. We've been researching some wonderful assisted living communities. Very nice places, Mom. Gardens, activities, medical staff on site 24 hours a day. The words hit me like cold water. Assisted living? Just to look at, Mom. Just to see what's available. Gregory leaned forward, his expression earnest in that way that reminded me of when he was 12 and trying to explain why he'd broken my favorite vase. There's this place called Sunset Manor, about 20 minutes from our house. We could visit every week, take you out for dinner, shopping. I studied their faces across the table. Gregory with his earnest concern, Roxanne with her practiced sympathy. Neither of them had asked what I wanted. Neither had suggested I might want to stay in the home Rodney and I had built together. I'm not ready to give up my independence, I said carefully. Of course not, Roxanne rushed to assure me. But think about it. No more worrying about maintenance. No more cooking if you don't want to. No more being alone all the time. And if something happened, if you fell or had a medical emergency, nothing's going to happen to me. Mom, you're not getting any younger. Gregory's voice carried a note of impatience I recognized from his teenage years. Dad's gone, and we're your family now. We just want what's best for you. After they left, I sat in Rodney's recliner, surrounded by 40 years of memories. The family photos on the mantel, the books we'd collected, the throw pillows I'd needle-pointed during long winter evenings. This was my life, my history, my home. But it was also something else, something Gregory and Roxanne didn't know. It was my sanctuary, my fortress, my launching pad. I went to Rodney's desk and pulled out the folder David Morrison had asked me to bring to our meeting. Inside were documents Rodney had left for me, documents that would change everything. As I read through Rodney's careful handwriting, his final letter to me, I began to understand that my husband had been preparing for this moment long before his illness. He'd seen something in Gregory and Roxanne that I'd been too loving, too hopeful to recognize. The letter was dated 6 months before his diagnosis. My dearest Corinne, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're alone with decisions I pray you'll never have to make. But knowing our son as I've come to know him these past few years, I suspect you will. Gregory is not the boy we raised. I don't know when he changed, or if he was always this way and we were too blind to see it. But he sees you as a burden now, and he sees your inheritance as his right. Roxanne has encouraged this, and together they will try to convince you that you're helpless, that you need their management. You are not helpless. You never have been. The enclosed documents will show you exactly how much your life is worth, to them and to you. Use this knowledge wisely. Use it to protect yourself and to teach them what family really means. I love you, Corinne. I trust you to do what's right. Forever yours, Rodney. My hands trembled as I set the letter aside and looked at the next document, a summary of accounts and assets that took my breath away. Rodney's construction company hadn't just supported us, it had made us wealthy. The house was paid off and worth $400,000. Rodney had left me 2 cars, his practical Honda and a 1967 Mustang convertible he'd restored in secret, worth $60,000. But it was the bank account that made me grip the arm of his chair. $800,000. In an account with only my name on it. Gregory and Roxanne didn't know any of this. They assumed we lived on Rodney's modest pension and Social Security, that the house carried a mortgage, that I had perhaps $50,000 to my name, enough to make me worth managing, not enough to make me independent. They were wrong on both counts. I folded Rodney's letter carefully and locked it back in the desk drawer with the other documents. Tomorrow, I would meet with David Morrison and learn the full extent of Rodney's final gift to me. Tonight, I would sit in his chair and plan exactly how I would handle my son's attempt to warehouse my life. Outside, a spring storm was building. Lightning flickered in the distance, and I counted the seconds until thunder rolled across Cedar Falls. Rodney had taught me that, how to measure the distance of approaching storms. This one was going to be very close indeed. The phone rang, interrupting my calculations. Gregory's voice was warm, solicitous. "Hey, Mom. Just wanted to check on you before bed. Roxanne made some calls today about Sunset Manor. They have an opening next month, and they'd love to give us a tour this weekend." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of Rodney's secrets and the sharp clarity of what lay ahead. "That's very thoughtful of you both," I said quietly. "Let me think about it." "Of course, Mom. Take all the time you need. We just want you to be safe and happy." After I hung up, I sat in the growing darkness, listening to the storm approach. Tomorrow, I would discover exactly how much my freedom was worth. Tomorrow, I would begin to understand the full scope of Rodney's gift and the true nature of my son's intentions. But tonight, for the first time since Rodney's death, I smiled. The storm was coming, but I was no longer defenseless against it. David Morrison's law office occupied the second floor of a brick building on Main Street, the kind of place that had weathered 40 years of small-town changes while maintaining its dignity. I climbed the narrow stairs Tuesday morning, my purse clutched tightly against my side, Rodney's documents secure in a manila envelope. David greeted me with the same gentle professionalism he'd shown during Rodney's illness. At 55, he still wore the wire-rimmed glasses and conservative ties that had made him seem older when Rodney first hired him. His handshake was firm, his eyes kind but serious. "Corinne, please sit down. Can I get you coffee?" "No, thank you." I settled into the leather chair across from his desk, the same chair where I'd sat 6 months ago while Rodney discussed his will. Then, I'd been the supportive wife, letting my husband handle business while I worried about his cough. "Rodney left very specific instructions about this meeting," David began, opening a thick file. "He wanted to make sure you understood your complete financial picture before—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Before you had to make any decisions about your future." He spread the documents across his desk like a hand of cards that would determine my fate. Property deeds, bank statements, investment portfolios, insurance policies. A financial landscape I'd never fully explored. "Your husband was a remarkable man, Corinne, not just in his devotion to you, but in his business acumen. He turned a small construction company into a very profitable enterprise, and more importantly, he invested wisely. The numbers David showed me were staggering. Rodney's construction company had been sold 5 years ago for $1.2 million, money he'd quietly invested in conservative funds and municipal bonds. The house was worth more than I'd imagined. The life insurance policy alone was worth $500,000. In total, David said quietly, your liquid assets amount to approximately $1.4 million. The house and personal property bring your total worth to just under $2 million. I stared at the papers, my practical teacher's mind struggling to process the reality. Rodney and I had lived comfortably but modestly. We'd driven used cars, clipped coupons, bought generic brands at the grocery store. I'd mended clothes and grown vegetables in our backyard garden. He wanted you to know, David continued, that he kept your lifestyle modest by choice, not necessity. He believed in security, in having enough to weather any storm. He also believed— David hesitated, then pulled out another document. He believed you might need to protect yourself. It was a letter addressed to David, written in Rodney's careful handwriting. David, by the time Corinne reads this, Gregory will have begun pressuring her to give up her independence. I've watched my son change over the past few years, influenced by his wife's materialism and his own growing sense of entitlement. They assume Corinne is helpless and poor. They are wrong on both counts. Corinne has the strength to handle wealth, but she may need help understanding that strength. She spent 40 years as a teacher, managing classrooms, solving problems, making difficult decisions. She raised a son, managed a household, and supported my business dreams when we had nothing but hope. She is not fragile. She is not helpless, and she is not poor. Help her understand this. Help her protect herself. And if Gregory challenges her decisions, remind him that family loyalty works both ways. Rodney Thornfield. Corinne, David said gently, Rodney asked me to help you with whatever decisions you make, but he was very clear that the decisions are yours alone. I folded my hands in my lap, feeling the weight of Rodney's trust and the sharp clarity of my situation. What exactly did Gregory tell you when he called yesterday? David's eyebrows rose. I'm sorry? Gregory called you yesterday afternoon. I could tell from his conversation with Roxanne when he got home. What did he want? David cleared his throat uncomfortably. He expressed concern about your ability to manage your finances alone. He asked about establishing a conservatorship. The word hit me like a slap. A conservatorship? It's a legal arrangement where someone else manages your financial affairs. Gregory seemed to think it would be in your best interest, given your recent loss and he said your advanced age might make financial decisions difficult. I was 63 years old. I'd been managing budgets and making decisions since before Gregory was born. What did you tell him? I told him that would require a court order and clear evidence of mental incapacity. I also told him that any such proceeding would require your consent or a very compelling medical evaluation. David leaned forward. Corinne, you're nowhere near needing that kind of protection. Your husband knew that. The question is, do you? I left David's office with a new understanding of my power and a crystal clear view of my son's intentions. Gregory didn't want to help me manage my money. He wanted to manage my money. The assisted living facility wasn't about my safety. It was about his control. The drive home took me past Sunset Manor, the place Gregory and Roxanne wanted to tour this weekend. It was a pleasant enough building, modern and clean, with manicured grounds and a circular drive. But it was also a container, a place where people went to wait for death while their families managed their assets. I pulled into the visitor parking lot and sat in my car, studying the building. Through the large windows, I could see residents in wheelchairs lined up in front of a television, their blank faces reflecting the afternoon light. A few others walked slowly through the halls with aluminum walkers, their steps careful and measured. These were not my people. This was not my future. My phone buzzed with a text from Roxanne. Can't wait for Saturday's tour. They said they have a lovely room available on the second floor with a view of the gardens. I typed back, looking forward to it. But I wasn't looking forward to it. I was looking forward to what would come after. That evening, Gregory and Roxanne arrived for dinner with a stack of brochures and a tablet computer loaded with information about assisted living facilities. They'd expanded their search beyond Sunset Manor to include places in Des Moines, Ames, even Iowa City. The great thing about these places, Roxanne said, spreading brochures across my kitchen table, is that they handle everything. Meals, housekeeping, medical care, activities. You'd never have to worry about anything again. Some worry keeps a person sharp, I said, serving the chicken casserole I'd made from Rodney's mother's recipe. Mom, you've worried enough for one lifetime, Gregory said. Dad would want you to relax, to enjoy your golden years. I wondered what Gregory would say if he knew my golden years were worth $2 million. I've been thinking about what I want to do with my life, I said carefully. Now that your father's gone, I have the freedom to make some changes. Exactly. Roxanne's face lit up with enthusiasm. That's what's so wonderful about these communities. They have book clubs, exercise classes, group trips. You could learn pottery or watercolor painting. I was thinking about something more adventurous. Gregory paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. Adventurous? Travel. Maybe volunteer work overseas. Your father and I always talked about seeing the world, helping people in less fortunate circumstances. The silence that followed was telling. Gregory and Roxanne exchanged one of their meaningful looks, the kind couples develop when they need to communicate without words. Mom? Gregory said slowly. That sounds wonderful in theory. But be realistic. You're not 25 anymore. International travel is expensive and volunteer work can be physically demanding. I'm in excellent health. For now, Roxanne added. But what if something happened while you were in some remote location? What if you got sick in a foreign country? What if I got sick here in Cedar Falls? That's different. Here you have us. Here you have familiar doctors, people who know you. I nodded thoughtfully, as if considering their concerns. You make valid points. Maybe I should start smaller. Volunteer locally. Take some trips within the United States. That sounds much more reasonable, Gregory said, relief evident in his voice. Of course, I'd need to sell the house first. Too much space for one person, and the maintenance costs are significant. Another meaningful look passed between them. Actually, Mom, Roxanne said carefully, we've been talking about that too. The housing market isn't great right now. You might want to hold on to the house for a while, maybe rent it out. Rent it out. Gregory and I would be happy to manage that for you, she continued. Find reliable tenants, collect rent, handle any problems that come up. It would give you a steady income stream while you're transitioning. Transitioning. Such a careful word for what they had planned. That's very generous of you both, I said. But I wouldn't want to burden you with that kind of responsibility. It's not a burden, Mom. We're family. Family. They kept using that word, but I was beginning to understand they didn't know what it meant. After they left, I sat at my computer and began researching international volunteer organizations. Rodney had been right. I wasn't helpless. I'd managed a classroom full of teenagers for 15 years, balanced budgets when money was tight, organized community fundraisers, served on the school board. I'd run a household, raised a son, and supported my husband's dreams. I was perfectly capable of managing my own life. The Habitat for Humanity website showed volunteer opportunities in 17 countries. Doctors Without Borders needed administrative support in field offices across Africa. The Peace Corps had programs for older volunteers with professional experience. I bookmarked a dozen opportunities and began filling out preliminary applications. If Gregory and Roxanne wanted to play games with my future, I would show them exactly how high the stakes really were. My phone rang at 10:30. Gregory's voice was casual, but I could hear the underlying tension. Hey, Mom, Roxanne had a thought. Maybe we should schedule that financial planning meeting she mentioned. You know, get a clear picture of your resources before you make any big decisions. What kind of big decisions? Well, you mentioned travel, volunteer work. Those things can be expensive, and we want to make sure you have enough money to last. I see. David Morrison could probably recommend a good financial advisor, someone who specializes in retirement planning. I almost laughed. Gregory had no idea that David Morrison was already very familiar with my financial situation. That's thoughtful of you to be concerned about my future. Of course we're concerned. We love you, Mom. Love. Another word they used without understanding its meaning. I'll think about it, I said. Good. And Mom? Maybe hold off on any major commitments until we get a better handle on things. You know, just to be safe. After I hung up, I opened Rodney's desk drawer and pulled out his letter again. Reading his words, I could hear his voice, feel his presence in the quiet house we'd shared for 40 years. You are not helpless. You never have been. Rodney had seen this coming. He'd prepared for it, trusted me to handle it, given me the tools I would need. Tomorrow I would call 3 of the organizations I'd researched. I would schedule interviews, submit applications, begin the process of reclaiming my life. But tonight, I would plan exactly how to handle Saturday's tour of Sunset Manor. Gregory and Roxanne were about to learn that their careful manipulation had one fatal flaw. They'd underestimated the woman they were trying to control. I pulled out a notepad and began writing a list. Not a list of things I needed to pack for assisted living, but a list of questions I would ask during our tour. Questions about costs, about financial requirements, about what happened when residents could no longer afford the monthly fees. Questions that would reveal exactly what Gregory and Roxanne really knew about my financial situation. Questions that would begin my education in the art of strategic revenge. Outside, another spring storm was building. But this time, I wasn't counting the distance between lightning and thunder. This time, I was the storm. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp Iowa sunshine that makes even difficult conversations seem possible. I dressed carefully for our tour of Sunset Manor. A navy cardigan Rodney had complimented, comfortable walking shoes, and the small gold cross necklace my mother had given me. I wanted to look like exactly what Gregory and Roxanne expected. A recently widowed woman in need of guidance. They arrived at 10 o'clock sharp, Gregory in pressed khakis and a polo shirt, Roxanne in a cheerful yellow sundress that somehow managed to make even a nursing home tour seem like a social event. Her smile was bright, her manner encouraging, but I caught the quick, assessing glance she gave my outfit. "You look lovely, Mom," Gregory said, kissing my cheek. "Ready for this?" "As ready as anyone can be to tour their potential future," I replied. The 15-minute drive to Sunset Manor gave me time to observe my son and daughter-in-law in their natural habitat. Roxanne chattered about the facility's amenities, while Gregory provided practical commentary about medical care and security. They'd clearly researched this thoroughly, rehearsed their presentation. "The monthly fee includes everything," Roxanne was saying as we pulled into the circular drive. "Meals, housekeeping, activities, basic medical care. It's really quite reasonable when you consider what you'd spend maintaining the house." "How reasonable?" I asked. "About $4,000 a month," Gregory said. "That sounds like a lot, but when you factor in your house payment, utilities, food, maintenance—" "I don't have a house payment." Silence filled the BMW. I could practically hear Gregory's mental gears turning. "Well, no, not a mortgage payment," he said carefully. "But property taxes, insurance, upkeep. It all adds up." Inside Sunset Manor, we were greeted by a woman named Patricia Wells, the marketing director. She was perhaps 50, with carefully styled blonde hair and the kind of professional warmth that comes from years of convincing families to make difficult decisions. "Mrs. Thornfield, I'm so pleased to meet you. Gregory and Roxanne have told me wonderful things about you." I shook her hand, noting the firmness of her grip and the way her eyes assessed me quickly. Health, mobility, cognitive function. I'd seen that same evaluating look in parents' eyes when they met me as their child's teacher. "Thank you for accommodating us on such short notice," I said. "Of course. Let me show you around. I think you'll be impressed with what we offer." The tour began in the main lobby, a pleasant space with comfortable seating areas, a reception desk, and large windows overlooking the gardens. Residents moved through the space at the measured pace of people who had nowhere urgent to go. Some used walkers, others moved independently, but all shared the particular careful gait of people conscious of their fragility. "We have 120 residents," Patricia explained as we walked. "Independent living, assisted living, and memory care, all on one campus. It means you never have to move again, no matter how your needs change." "That's reassuring," I said, watching Gregory nod approvingly. We visited the dining room where lunch was being served. The food looked institutional but adequate. Baked chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. The residents ate quietly, some alone, others in small groups. A few needed assistance from staff members who moved efficiently between tables. 3 meals a day, Patricia noted, plus snacks available 24 hours. Our dietary staff can accommodate most medical restrictions and preferences. "What about people who like to cook for themselves?" I asked. "Each apartment has a small kitchenette, but honestly, most residents find it's easier to just enjoy the freedom from meal planning." Roxanne squeezed my arm. "Imagine never having to grocery shop or cook if you don't want to. You could spend your time on things you actually enjoy." We toured the activity rooms, a library with large print books and jigsaw puzzles, an art room where residents painted watercolor flowers, a recreation room where a group was playing bingo with prizes of travel-sized toiletries. "We have a very active social calendar," Patricia said. "Exercise classes, guest speakers, day trips to local attractions. There's always something happening." I watched the bingo players for a moment, noting their concentration on the simple game, their excitement over winning small prizes. These were people who had once managed households, raised families, built careers. Now they competed for hand lotion and lip balm. "It looks very organized," I said. "We find structure helps our residents feel secure," Patricia replied. The apartment they showed us was on the second floor, just as Roxanne had mentioned. It was pleasant enough. A small living area, a bedroom with a hospital-style bed, a kitchenette with a microwave and small refrigerator, a bathroom with grab bars and a walk-in shower. This would be perfect for you, Mom, Gregory said, standing in the middle of the main room. Look at that view of the garden. Through the window, I could see the carefully maintained grounds. Flower beds, walking paths, benches placed at regular intervals. It was pretty in the way a postcard is pretty, designed to be pleasing without requiring any effort or involvement. How much personal furniture can residents bring? I asked. That's a great question, Patricia said. We encourage residents to bring personal items that make them feel at home. A favorite chair, family photos, small decorative pieces. But the apartments are furnished with the essentials, so there's no need to move heavy furniture. What happens to the furniture that doesn't fit? Another brief pause. Patricia glanced at Gregory and Roxanne. Families usually handle that, she said diplomatically. Storage, donations, sales, whatever works best. I nodded thoughtfully, picturing 40 years of memories being sorted into piles of keep, donate, and discard. And what about residents who want to travel? I asked. Visit family? Take vacations? We're very flexible about short trips, Patricia assured me. We just ask for advance notice so we can adjust meal planning and activities. What about longer trips? A month or two? Patricia's smile became a bit fixed. We'd have to discuss that on a case-by-case basis. The monthly fee continues regardless, of course, and we'd need to make sure your apartment remained available. So I'd pay $4,000 a month even if I wasn't here? Think of it as maintaining your home base, Roxanne interjected quickly. You'd have the security of knowing you always had a place to come back to. After the tour, we sat in Patricia's office to discuss practical matters. She had prepared a folder with information about costs, services, and admission procedures. The basic monthly fee is $3,800, she explained, but that can vary depending on the level of care needed. If you require assistance with medications, personal care, or have medical needs that require additional attention, there are supplemental charges. What's the maximum monthly cost? I asked. For memory care, it can reach $6,500 per month, but that's for residents who need comprehensive assistance. Gregory leaned forward. What kind of financial documentation do you require? We need to verify that potential residents can afford at least 2 years of care in advance, Patricia said. Bank statements, investment portfolios, property valuations. We also require a conversation with family members to ensure everyone understands the financial commitment. I watched Gregory's face carefully. 2 years in advance. So for the basic level, that would be about $91,000, Patricia said smoothly. It sounds like a lot, but we find it protects both the resident and the facility. No one wants to worry about running out of money. Gregory cleared his throat. And if someone's resources were limited, are there programs to help with costs? Medicaid can cover some expenses. The phone started ringing at 7:30 Monday morning. I was in Rodney's garden, pulling weeds from the flower beds and enjoying the morning sun on my face, when I heard Gregory's ringtone through the open kitchen window. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 8:15, then again at 9. By the time I came inside to wash my hands, there were 4 missed calls and 2 text messages. The desperation in his electronic persistence made me smile. I poured myself a cup of coffee and listened to his messages. Mom, got your letter. Can you call me back? I think there might be some confusion about the financial situation. Hey, it's me again. Roxanne and I are free this morning if you want to talk about this stuff in person. Mom, I'm worried you might be getting bad advice from someone. Can you please call me? Okay, I'm coming over. We need to talk. I was still smiling when his BMW pulled into my driveway at 10 o'clock. Gregory got out alone. Roxanne was apparently at work, managing her own crisis of expectations. He walked up to my front door with the determined stride of a man who'd spent the weekend crafting his arguments. Mom, we need to talk, he said before I could even say hello. Good morning to you too, Gregory. Coffee? This is serious, Mom. What's this about international volunteer work? And why are you meeting with David Morrison again? I led him into the kitchen, moving at my own pace, making him follow my rhythm instead of his urgency. I thought I explained that in my letter. I'm exploring my options. Mom, be realistic. You're 63 years old. You can't just run off to Africa or wherever you're thinking of going. Why not? The question stopped him cold. He stared at me as if I'd suggested joining the circus. Because, because it's not safe. Because you don't have the resources for that kind of adventure. Because you have responsibilities here. What responsibilities? Another pause. Gregory had clearly expected this conversation to go differently. You have the house to maintain, bills to pay, your health to consider. And frankly, Mom, you have family who care about you and want to make sure you're okay. I poured him coffee and sat down across from him at the kitchen table. Gregory, what exactly do you think my financial situation is? Well, I know Dad was careful with money, but construction work doesn't exactly make people wealthy. You have the house, probably some savings, Social Security, maybe a small pension. Probably some savings? Mom, I'm not trying to pry into your personal business, but if you're thinking about expensive travel and volunteer work, you need to be realistic about what you can afford. I studied my son's face, seeing the anxiety beneath his impatience. He was genuinely worried, not about my well-being, but about the inheritance he'd been counting on. How much do you think I have, Gregory? I don't know. Maybe 50,000? 75? Look, it doesn't matter how much you have. What matters is making it last. And you think $4,000 a month at Sunset Manor is the best way to make it last? I think it's the best way to make sure you're safe and taken care of. And if the money runs out, Roxanne and I would help. We'd never let you become homeless or anything. I set down my coffee cup and looked at my son, really looked at him. When had he become this calculating stranger? When had his love become conditional on my compliance? Gregory, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Of course. If I moved to Sunset Manor and ran out of money in 5 years, would you and Roxanne really take care of me? Would you invite me to live with you? Give me a room in your house? Support me financially? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Gregory's face went through a series of expressions. Surprise, calculation, something that might have been guilt. Mom, that's not... we'd figure something out. There are programs, other facilities. That's not what I asked. Look, we don't have to worry about that right now. We just need to focus on making good decisions with the resources you have. I stood up and walked to Rodney's desk, pulling out the folder David Morrison had given me. Gregory watched nervously as I returned to the table. I think it's time you understood exactly what resources I have, I said, opening the folder. I spread the financial documents across the table. Bank statements, investment summaries, property valuations, insurance policies. Gregory's eyes widened as he processed the numbers. This can't be right, he said, picking up a bank statement. This says you have over $1 million in this account alone. Your father was a very successful businessman. He was also a very private man who believed in living below his means. Gregory stared at the papers, his face cycling through shock, confusion, and something that looked like betrayal. You're rich. You're actually rich. I'm comfortable. I have enough money to live however I choose for the rest of my life. But you let Roxanne and me... He stopped, realizing what he was about to say. I let you what, Gregory? You let us worry about you. You let us think you needed our help. You offered to help. I never asked for it. But you knew what we were thinking. You knew we were trying to find ways to take care of you. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of this moment. Gregory, tell me honestly, if you'd known about this money, would you still have suggested I move to Sunset Manor? Another long pause. That's not the point. It's exactly the point. If you'd known I had nearly $2 million, would you have been so concerned about my safety? Would you have been so eager to help me manage my finances? Gregory's face was flushed now, his composure cracking. You're being unfair. We were trying to help you. Help me with what? Help me sell my house so you could manage the proceeds? Help me invest in your business opportunity? Help me make decisions about my own life? You're twisting this around. We were thinking about your future. No, Gregory, you were thinking about your future. You were thinking about the inheritance you expected to receive, and you were making plans based on that expectation. He stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. So what? You were testing us? You were playing some kind of game? I was observing. I was learning. I was discovering what kind of people my son and daughter-in-law really are. And what did you discover? I gathered the financial documents and placed them back in the folder. I discovered that you see me as a burden to be managed and an asset to be protected. I discovered that your love comes with conditions and expectations. I discovered that you have no interest in what I want or need, only in what you think is best for me. That's not true, isn't it? When I mentioned wanting to travel, to volunteer overseas, to have adventures, what was your reaction? Did you ask what would make me happy? Did you offer to help me plan? Did you express any interest in what I might want to do with my life? Gregory turned from the window, his face hard. You're 63 years old, Mom. You're not some college kid who can just run off and save the world. Why not? Because you're old. Because you're alone. Because you don't understand how dangerous the world is. I understand exactly how dangerous the world is, Gregory. I also understand that the greatest danger in my life right now is giving up my independence to people who don't have my best interests at heart. The words hung in the air between us like a sentence passed. Gregory stared at me, his face a mixture of anger and something that might have been fear. So what happens now? He asked quietly. Now you and Roxanne decide what kind of relationship you want to have with me. A relationship based on honesty and respect for my autonomy. Or no relationship at all. You're giving me an ultimatum? I'm giving you a choice. The same choice you gave me when you decided I was too old and incompetent to manage my own life. Gregory sat back down, his shoulders sagging. For a moment, he looked like the little boy I'd raised, confused and uncertain. Then his face hardened again. So you're just going to throw away your family? You're going to run off to Africa or wherever and abandon the people who love you? The people who love me would want me to be happy. They would support my dreams, encourage my independence, celebrate my adventures. They wouldn't try to warehouse me in an assisted living facility so they could control my assets. We never said anything about controlling your assets. You offered to manage the sale of my house, set up a trust, invest my money in Gregory's business venture. What would you call that? Gregory was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I thought you needed us. I thought we were helping. You thought I was helpless and poor. You thought you could make decisions for me because I was too old and too stupid to make them myself. That's not what I thought. Then what did you think, Gregory? What was your plan? He looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw something real in his eyes. Not calculation or manipulation, but genuine emotion. I thought you were going to die alone in this house. I thought you were going to get sick or hurt and have no one to help you. I thought you needed me to take care of you. And the money? The inheritance? His face closed off again. I don't know what you want me to say about that. I want you to tell me the truth. Fine. Yes, I thought about the inheritance. Yes, I thought about what would happen to the house, to Dad's things, to whatever money was left after your care. But that doesn't mean I didn't care about you. It means you cared about me as a responsibility, not as a person. It means you made assumptions about what I needed without ever asking what I wanted. Gregory stood up again, his composure returning. So what do you want, Mom? What's your plan? I smiled, feeling the weight of Rodney's secrets lifting from my shoulders. I want to live. I want to travel. I want to help people who need help. I want to use my remaining years to make a difference in the world. And if something happens to you, if you get sick or hurt in some foreign country, then I'll deal with it. The same way I dealt with your father's illness. The same way I've dealt with every challenge in my life. And us? What about Roxanne and me? That depends on you. If you can accept that I'm an independent woman with my own plans and dreams, then you'll always be welcome in my life. If you can't, I shrugged, then you'll have to live with the consequences of your choices. Gregory walked to the door, then turned back. Mom, I'm sorry if we handled this wrong, but we really were trying to help. I know you were, Gregory. That's what makes it so sad. After he left, I sat in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of my husband's love and my son's betrayal. The documents spread across the table represented more than financial security. They represented freedom, possibility, the chance to become someone new. I picked up my phone and called David Morrison. David, it's Corinne. I'm ready to start making some changes. What kind of changes? I want to set up a trust for my overseas volunteer work. I want to explore tax implications for extended international travel. And I want to make sure my will clearly reflects my intentions. And Gregory? Have you talked to him about your plans? I looked out the window at Rodney's garden, where spring was painting the world in shades of green and gold. Gregory has made his choice, David. Now it's time for me to make mine. The war was over. I had won. But the victory felt hollow, tainted by the cost of learning who my son really was. Tomorrow, I would begin planning my new life. Tonight, I would mourn the loss of the family I thought I had. 6 months later, I stood in the red dust of a Ghanaian village, watching the sun set over the construction site, where my Habitat for Humanity team had just finished building a home for a family of 7. My hands were dirty, my clothes stained with sweat and paint, my silver hair escaping from under a baseball cap that read, Iowa Hawkeyes. I had never felt more alive. The WhatsApp message on my phone buzzed insistently. Gregory again. I'd received dozens of messages over the past 6 months. Angry, pleading, manipulative, and finally, desperately apologetic. I glanced at the screen. Mom, Roxanne's pregnant. We're going to need your help. Please come home. I turned off the phone and slipped it into my pocket. The irony wasn't lost on me. Now that they had real financial pressures, now that they faced the actual costs of raising a child, suddenly, they remembered they had a wealthy mother. Mrs. Corinne, called Kwame, a 10-year-old boy who'd appointed himself my translator and guide. Come see. The family wants to thank you again. I walked over to where the OC family stood in front of their new home. A simple concrete block structure with a tin roof, 3 rooms, and running water. Akosua, the mother, took my hands and spoke in rapid Twi, while her husband Emmanuel translated. She says you are a blessing from God. She says her children will pray for you every day. I looked at the 3 children, ages 4, 7, and 10, who would now have a safe place to sleep, a clean place to study, protection from the rainy season floods that had destroyed their previous home. This was what wealth was for. This was what my inheritance meant. Tell her it's my honor to help, I said, accepting the small carved wooden elephant Akosua pressed into my hands. That evening, I sat on the veranda of the volunteer guest house, typing on my laptop. The internet connection was spotty, but I managed to send my weekly blog post to the website I'd started. Adventures in Wisdom, One Woman's Journey from Grief to Purpose. The blog had gained a surprising following. Other widows and widowers looking for inspiration. Adult children dealing with aging parents. People of all ages questioning their life choices. I'd become an accidental advocate for late-life reinvention. Week 24 in Ghana. Today we completed our 8th house. 8 families now have safe, clean homes where their children can thrive. 8 families have hope where they once had desperation. But I'm not writing to tell you about them. I'm writing to tell you about me. 6 months ago, I was a widow facing the choice between independence and security. My family offered me security, a safe place to live, people to manage my affairs, protection from the uncertainties of life. All I had to give up was my autonomy, my dreams, and my right to choose my own path. I chose differently. I chose uncertainty over security, adventure over safety, purpose over comfort. Some of you have written to ask if I'm angry at my son. The answer is complicated. I'm not angry. Anger is exhausting, and I don't have time for it. I'm disappointed. I'm sad, but I'm not angry. What I am is free. Free to wake up each morning and choose how to spend my day. Free to use my resources to make a difference. Free to discover parts of myself I never knew existed. At 63, I'm stronger than I was at 30. I'm more confident than I was at 40. I'm more purposeful than I was at 50. Age is not a prison sentence. Widowhood is not a death sentence. Family obligation is not a life sentence. You are never too old to start over. You are never too set in your ways to change. You are never too far from shore to chart a new course. Next week, I fly to Kenya to begin a 3-month assignment with Doctors Without Borders. I'll be managing logistics for a mobile clinic that serves remote villages. It's challenging work, but it's work that matters. After that, I'm considering an offer to teach English in Vietnam. At 64, I'll be the oldest volunteer in the program. I can't wait. The security my family offered me was an illusion. The only real security is knowing you can take care of yourself, that you have the resources and the courage to face whatever comes. I have both now. I have the financial resources my husband left me, and I have the courage I found in myself. To those of you facing similar choices, trust yourself. Trust your instincts. Trust your right to live your life on your own terms. The people who truly love you will support your choices, even if they don't understand them. The people who don't, well, their opinion doesn't matter as much as you think it does. From Ghana, with love and hope. Corinne, I posted the blog entry and closed my laptop. My phone buzzed with another message from Gregory, but I ignored it. Tomorrow, I would fly to Accra, then to Nairobi, then to a small village in northern Kenya, where people needed medical care more than they needed my family drama. The stars over Ghana were spectacular, unpolluted by city lights. I sat in the darkness, thinking about Rodney, about the gift he'd given me, about the life I'd built from the ashes of his death. Rodney had known. Somehow he'd seen what I couldn't see, that Gregory and Roxanne would try to control me, would try to make me into a burden to be managed rather than a person to be loved. He'd given me the tools to fight back, to choose my own path. My phone rang. Not Gregory this time, but an unknown number with a Cedar Falls area code. Hello? Mrs. Thornfield? This is Patricia Wells from Sunset Manor. I'm calling about your son. I sat up straighter. What about him? He's been calling us repeatedly, asking about financial assistance programs for residents. He seems to think that you might need our services in the future. I almost laughed. I see. I wanted to let you know that we don't discuss residents or potential residents with family members without written consent, but he's been quite persistent. Thank you for telling me, Patricia. I appreciate your discretion. Mrs. Thornfield, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I follow your blog. What you're doing? It's inspiring. You're showing people that life doesn't end at 60. Thank you. That means a lot. Your son mentioned that you're overseas now. Is it everything you hoped it would be? I looked out at the African night sky, listened to the sounds of the village settling into sleep, felt the satisfaction of a day spent building something meaningful. It's more than I hoped, I said. It's everything I didn't know I needed. After I hung up, I thought about Patricia's call. Gregory was still trying to control the narrative, still trying to create a crisis that would justify his intervention. The thought of him calling assisted living facilities, painting me as a confused old woman who needed rescue, would have horrified me 6 months ago. Now it just seemed pathetic. I opened my laptop and began typing a new email. Dear Gregory and Roxanne, congratulations on your pregnancy. I'm sure you'll be wonderful parents. I received your messages about needing help. I understand that babies are expensive and that you're concerned about the future. But I need you to understand something. I am not your financial backup plan. I am a 63-year-old woman living exactly the life I choose to live. I am healthy, happy, and productive. I am using my resources to help people who need help, to make a difference in places where difference is desperately needed. I am not lost. I am not confused. I am not in need of rescue. I am free. If you want a relationship with me, it will be on terms of mutual respect and understanding. You will not attempt to manage my life, control my finances, or make decisions for me. You will not call assisted living facilities on my behalf. You will not spread stories about my mental capacity or my ability to take care of myself. If you can accept these terms, you are welcome to contact me. If you cannot, then I wish you well and hope you find the strength to solve your own problems without depending on others. I love you both, but I love myself more. Corinne P.S. I'm changing my will. The house will be donated to Habitat for Humanity upon my death. My liquid assets will be divided between Doctors Without Borders, the Peace Corps, and a scholarship fund for late-life career changers. I wanted you to know so you can plan accordingly. I sent the email and closed my laptop. The lie about the will was strategic. Let them think their inheritance was gone. Let them face the reality of supporting themselves without my money as a safety net. In truth, I hadn't decided what to do with my estate, but I had decided one thing. Whatever I left behind would go to people who saw value in what I was trying to do, not to people who saw me as a problem to be solved. The next morning, I packed my bags for Kenya. 6 months in Ghana had taught me that I was capable of more than I'd ever imagined. I could adapt to new cultures, learn new languages, solve problems I'd never encountered before. I could be useful, valuable, important, not because of what I owned, but because of what I could contribute. As the plane lifted off from Accra, I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, grieving, uncertain, vulnerable to other people's manipulation. That woman was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized, but deeply admired. At the airport in Nairobi, I checked my phone for the first time in 24 hours. There were 17 missed calls from Gregory, 6 from Roxanne, and 1 email from David Morrison. Corinne, I've been contacted by Gregory regarding your mental capacity and your ability to manage your affairs. I want you to know that I refuse to discuss your situation with him and that I consider you to be of sound mind and fully capable of making your own decisions. However, I thought you should know that he's considering legal action to establish a conservatorship. Please call me when you have a chance. Best regards, David. I stared at the email, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Anger. Not the hot, impulsive anger of the moment, but the cold, strategic anger of someone who'd been pushed too far. Gregory wanted to declare me incompetent? He wanted to take control of my life through legal manipulation? I opened my laptop and began typing a new blog post. My final gift to my son. Some of you have asked what I would do if my family tried to force me back into the life I left behind. Today I found out. My son is attempting to have me declared mentally incompetent so he can control my financial affairs. He's calling it concern for my welfare. I call it what it is, theft. But I'm not writing to complain. I'm writing to thank him. His actions have clarified something I've been struggling with for months: what to do with my inheritance. I came to Africa to find purpose. I found it. I came to find meaning. I found it. I came to find freedom. I found it. But I also found clarity. My son sees my money as his birthright. He sees my independence as a threat to his inheritance. He sees my happiness as irrelevant to his needs. He's right about one thing. My money is going to help people, just not the people he thinks. I'm 73 years old. I have 20 good years left, maybe more. I intend to spend every one of them working, traveling, learning, contributing. And when I die, every penny I have will go to organizations that help people become who they're meant to be. My son wanted my money. Instead, he's going to get a lesson in consequences. The greatest gift you can give your children is not your wealth, it's your example. I hope my son learns from mine. From Kenya, with love and liberation, Corinne. I posted the blog entry and turned off my laptop. Tomorrow I would call David Morrison and make the changes to my will official. Tonight, I would sleep under the African stars, dreaming of the life I'd built from the ashes of the one I'd left behind. Outside my window, the sounds of Nairobi settled into evening quiet. Somewhere in Iowa, Gregory was probably planning his next move, strategizing with Roxanne about how to control a woman who'd already escaped his reach. Let him plan. Let him scheme. Let him discover that the woman he'd tried to warehouse was stronger, smarter, and more determined than he'd ever imagined. I was Corinne Thornfield, and I was finally, completely, gloriously free. The war was over. I had won. And the victory was sweeter than I'd ever imagined it could be. That's my story. That's how I learned that the greatest inheritance isn't money. It's the courage to live life on your own terms. If you're facing a similar situation, remember, you are stronger than you think, more capable than they believe, and more valuable than they know. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. And remember, it's never too late to start over.